Hello, everybody. I've been doing a lot of charts lately and also diving in a little bit more intensely, if you will, into a certain technique that I was reopened to or reacquainted with at this recent NORWAC in Seattle, a Northwest Astrological Conference, a couple weeks ago. Now, I have a tendency to, essentially, once something settles in at a level where, I grok it, or at least I have a really good handle on it, I'm going to teach it to somebody. That's my Saturn in the Virgo in the seventh house. However, the capability, if you will, of those on this wavelength to be able to sit with that in-depth level of what the astrological tool has to offer to us is probably not the best use of this particular venue. My weekly look at the astrological planetary dance that is inviting us to participate with our celestial neighbors and each other in reality, which is kind of the crux of why it is that astrology works as well as it does. I recently had probably my longest term friend, not including my brothers, who I went to grade school, fifth and sixth grade with when I lived in Cairo, Egypt, asked me to put out a query. Actually, he suggested, or maybe he asked me if how much do I rely on tuning into the astrological storyline that we astrologers tune into. And so I put the query out to those on my astrological wavelength, and I only got back a few responses, which, kind of informed me that most astrologers, not all, but it seems like most of the astrologers, at least the ones that responded to the query, don't really tune into that or this astrological dance as often as I expected. I tune into it at least every week when I look to see what's going on here, but often during the week, if something is, tickling my imagination or, the query aspect of my curiosity, which, we're in a Mercury out of bounds zone right now until the 21st, 22nd of the month that, should be stimulating everybody's curiosity because it's in Gemini, and the sun is in Gemini. So are you asking questions? Are you asking appropriate questions as to, what is the dance of life in this moment? Trying to tickle my imagination with that perhaps is going to alter the direction that I've been going in that I really thought was what I needed to pay attention to, and awakening something new that is going to alter that direction that beckons my further participation with. And as I was meditating yesterday, getting set up to do the celestial chatter for this week, and, contemplating, do I want to throw in the potential complexities of what this new astrological dance theme process is. And what I came up with, ironically, once I got to the point where I realized, no, I don't think that that's the wisest use of this consideration. However, I received a download from the universe that said, quantum entanglement. Now, the visions that are inspired by that phrase are along the lines of pick a flower, disturb a distant star. And as I meditated upon this since yesterday to today and through the deep dreamscape of last night, the simultaneity of the energy signature that quantum entanglement represents happens all the way from the flower in my hand that I've just picked to that distant star version of reality. And everywhere in between, Yeah, the idea of something really distant and everything it's intriguing in the sense that it makes us potentially feel small. But how about quantum entanglement, which is essentially an energy signature that happens simultaneously in seemingly different points of reality, which could be as close as you and me, you and I, sharing in a moment where all of a sudden it's like, oh, and that is a possibility. How about myself and the trees in my forest? That simultaneous, they're calling us saying, Jeff, or the garden, check me now. I feel like there's something going on that that we're sharing an energy quotient about. And so off I go, and I need to be there. Well, how about this quantum entanglement, extending it just a wee bit further to our planetary neighbors, which is the astrological dance that every week I meditate upon what might be the most appropriate way to present this that can inspire you and I, of course, to pay just a little closer attention to, how is my engagement with life actually in tune at so many different levels. Yeah, that is what astrology is. There's a dance or some musical piece that I often hear musical pieces playing in the background. I go, I don't know where that's coming. Perhaps that's that quantum entanglement that just, is at work all the time, just coming through from who knows where. But to actually be thankful for those moments of being awake, to tune into that expansive level of reality that is in play all the time. And, frequently or perhaps infrequently, we tune into it. I will use maybe a couple things from the Sabian aspect orbs material that Robert Blaschke, who I fortunately got to spend time with back along the way before he passed away, because he came to be a part of our weekly astrology group here in the Port Townsend area years and years ago. And at the time I tried to grasp the meat of this Sabian aspect or experience. And, you know, at that time it didn't really set, but the presentation that recently happened at Narwak by Jen Zahart, yeah, reminded me I should look at that again. Anyway, be that as it may, this week we have some energy in play that I'm going to show to you. We'll get a chart up. Monday. Can't trust that day. On Monday, actually, as Sunday became Monday, Mercury changed from Gemini into Cancer. Jupiter changed from Gemini into Cancer. You know, those are a couple of big changes. And Mars going through this, you know, beyond the limits of the Capricorn zone of boundary, steps out of bounds. And it will be out of bounds until the 14th. So for a good portion of this week, we have the moon out of bounds in Sagittarius, Mercury out of bounds there in Cancer now. So we've got some potential energy afoot that is, you know, probably tickling aspects of our imagination, since the moon rules Cancer, where Mercury now is going to be residing beginning this week. The potential, shall we call it, for feeling things that you might not normally be inclined to, you know, to sense is afoot. Because also this week we're going to have a full moon. It'll happen right in the wee earliest hours of Wednesday here on the West Coast, as the moon, you know, is up there in Sagittarius, opposing the sun down there in Gemini. So you could almost sense that perhaps that mercurial out of bounds flavor has not abated as much as we might have expected or thought that it would. And, you know, dancing with Jupiter. Why would we think anything could ever, you know, exist on a small scale? Jupiter doesn't exist there, and Jupiter in Cancer is kind of like, they call it exalted. It's really happy to be there. And so the whole experience of, you know, our Cancer, which is the next sign that the sun is going to go into, but not for until later on next week, is asking us, you know, the astrology chart is basically, it's a variety of energy signatures that are going on all the time. We have Cancer parts, we have Gemini parts, we have Aquarian parts, we have Scorpio parts. All those signatures are in play all the time. It's just that by the astrological chart, looking at it, you can say, oh, you know, something, a light has come on in a particular sign that's asking me to pay attention a little bit more specifically to what that energy signature is attempting to awaken me to as a part of myself. Now, the thing that I'm going to focus on this week, actually, let's go back a day. And the reason I'm going back a day is because the aspect of this week, how about that? Not a planet, but the aspect of this week is the square. And I've been looking at and these are all waxing squares that as the week unfolds are going to shift into waning squares. Like Venus, this is Sunday, by the way, moving along in Taurus, which it has recently entered into, comes into a square pattern with Pluto. This degree that you see right here, 3 degrees 56 minutes, is a waning square because it's now moving away from the square. But as Sunday becomes Monday, it's a waxing square. And as such, uh, well, squares, they represent a kind of energy, in the waxing uptick of any square, the the increasing intensity of challenge that any square can represent uh, is afoot. It's asking us to really, seek clarity in what it is that the particular planets involved are about. And so we got Pluto, that investigation into the deepest level of awareness in Aquarius, in the context of, group energy or inventiveness. And we got Venus, the ruler of Taurus, down here in Taurus, saying, I would, I'm tuned into, as Venus, the experience, the profound experience of what does it mean to survive? What is my value structure? And you put that value structure into that deep transformational group energy thing with this square coming into it. You can kind of feel, is there some tension that might be developing in that group signature? Might there be, questions that are interfering with the aspirations of some new inventive thing, style, or technique that is on the table, but maybe just not quite ready for exposure to a larger audience? Yeah, that's a possibility. And Taurus, Taurus is our connection to Mother Earth. I want you to feel into that. And I can throw that feel in there because of the lunar dance that's happening where the sun, or the moon, is moving into opposition to the sun. And another aspect that is a forming square is this forming square between Mars and Uranus. Mars in Leo and Uranus in Taurus. Think of the energy of projection that Mars in Leo is always putting out there. This process of, tickling chance to see what's going to happen. Uranus, always about, shaking, rattling, and stirring things up to such an extent that you have to go, wait a minute, I feel almost like there could be a revolutionary experience that's trying to get my attention. And I would have to remind you that this is true. But why does Uranus do this? Uranus does this to awaken us. Prometheus, bringing fire to mankind, to awaken a new aspect of life that is right there, right on the verge of expression. But you have to be willing in any moment to experience that. And this is a Mars, Saturn, Uranus that's a thing. So, where is the intensity of that Leo Taurus square at work? And you have to really pay attention because this is going to happen this week, that it's going to be the waxing square and then it's going to be the waning square. And when a waxing square, it's an increase in the energy or increase in that signature that's being considered. And the waning is like, kind of like, well, the intensity of what it is that is on the table that has, perhaps been just a wee bit challenging. When it gets to that waxing square, the process is, it's a receding quality to that square. There's so many factors here to play with. I was going to read you something out of the book, but I'm not going. And this is the Robert Blaski's book, The Sabian Aspect Orbs. Suffice it to say that in the celestial dance, these squares come and go. And each time that they show up, there's a building quality as the aspect is coming into exactness, and then a receding quality. It says, oh, wow, whew, I made it through that experience, what's next? And other squares that are transpiring are this Mercury square to Saturn, which as this week unfolded, we're still in Monday, on this, but as this week unfolded, Mercury, when Sunday became Monday, switched from Gemini to Cancer. And in doing so, moved into a waxing square with Saturn. As you can see from this chart right here, it's now in a waning square. So Mercury, out of bounds, the ruler of our, imagination and curiosity and how we communicate with one another, in that square to Saturn in Aries is just like, the whole experience of Saturn being in Aries is, I need a format, a structure, if you will, in this arena of self-discovery. The impulse of seed eruption, Aries, being very specifically oriented, Saturn-wise, into whatever that seed that was developed in its previous level of experience coming to light, coming into the light. This is Aries. And at the same time, you can see that this Mercury is also moving into a waning square with Neptune here at 2 degrees. But at the same time, Jupiter, which we mentioned a little bit earlier, is moving into a waxing square with Saturn and will also be in that waxing square with Neptune. So here we have, and our exalted Jupiter down there in Cancer is saying, pay attention to your foundations. Where is your root hooked into? Which, if you think about it, from the perspective of something basically being born anew, that Aries reality, this Saturn-Neptune part being inspired by Jupiter's willingness to expand its root growth efficiently, could be nothing but helpful for a plant's growth, for life to grow in reality. So that Jupiter square that is forming right now is, you can feel the intensification of those energies of something wants to be born new in this. And Jupiter is saying, yes, make sure you are rooted very well into the substance that can enhance the process of growth that you're about to experience. See, I'm having a hard time getting through this week. I haven't even made it out of Monday yet. And, oh yeah, we already did the waxing square Mars Uranus. On this day, the 10th, well, actually, ironically, it's not until the wee early hours of Wednesday that this moon hits the 20 degrees of Sagittarius. I got distracted there for a minute. It actually, when I look at this chart, it looks like this is going to basically in 4 hours, which is because the moon moves a degree every 2 hours, it's going to oppose this sun, which will be the full moon. So Tuesday, Mars Day. Well, we know what Mars is doing. Mars is forming that square to Uranus. It's over there in Leo. It's actually getting ready to shift its thing, which it won't do until next week into Virgo. But That's a whole different ballgame. Let's okay, yeah. Those actually were the aspects that I was interested in bringing up for this week. And if I were doing an individuals chart, which I've done a bunch lately, I would probably be tuning into the actual Sabian moments of these forming squares and waning squares, because the Sabian symbols are they're an organic, if you will, process of taking steps forward in an experience. And each Sabian symbol represents the potential to be able to tune in at a rather unique level to what? To opportunity, to see just how does that particular aspect, awaken in me that particular Sabian symbol degree. I'm going to just, since we are having a full moon coming up, let's take a look at our full moon Sabian symbol. A child and a dog wearing borrowed eyeglasses. Oh, I seem to remember a cartoon character a lot like that, where the dog was really, really smart. In the keynote, the use of imagination and make believe in anticipating higher stages of development. Now, this is a full moon in Sagittarius. Doesn't that sound like higher stages of development? Because Sagittarius, the unlimited frontier, there's always more. And this maximum lunar or solar reflected light that the moon is bringing to our consciousness on this Tuesday, Wednesday window is saying, something is beckoning my attention. Well, what I would say that it is right now, for me anyway, it's that quantum entanglement signature. I don't know in any moment when that extension, wow, even as I say the term extension to denote a reaching out kind of a thing, because quantum entanglement is so simultaneous, is it really a reaching out, or is it just an awareness uptick in the dynamics of this present moment that is shared with you, with me, with the trees in the forest, with the planets around us, with a distant star in a far, far removed galaxy, all simultaneously saying, we want to play together. Are you awake and willing enough to take that step? Let's take and shoot our chart ahead before I get too friggin' carried away with the quantum entanglement. It can be distracting. And so, as I was meditating upon that, here, I'm Wednesday. It's Mercurial Day. We get to this, my brain goes into meditation mode. The necessity to engage a version of our boundaries when the process of quantum entanglement arises is critical. You don't want to, just fly off into unlimited space and never be able to come back. You need a foundation. Okay, and our out of bounds Mercury is where? That's down here in Cancer, our foundations. And Jupiter is saying, yeah, make sure that you have a very substantial foundation. Always, always, always. So that what comes through when that quantum entanglement knocks on your door is actually relevant. It really is a process to attempt awakening us to something that we don't normally pay attention to. And as we're going through the week, Mars is moving into a waning square with Uranus. A waning square, it's kind of like, okay, that intensification of challenge that a square represents is going to go through its dissipating cycle right now. The square from Mercury up here to the Saturn and Neptune is doing the same thing. It's kind of like, and of course from the Venus to the Pluto, same thing. It's dissipating. It's, releasing some of the, potential pent up energy of, what should we call it? Angst, maybe, that the square brings about. And we unfold the rest of the week. See what other dynamics, because I've already kind of gone through all these things. Yeah. Oh, on this Friday, Saturday dance, 14th. That's when Jupiter actually moves into right there, almost an exact square with that Saturn. Actually, for intents and purposes, it is an exact square. And so maximum hurdles. We'll call them hurdles because, it's not like they can't be, successfully navigated. It's just that navigating them is going to, challenge you in some fashion. That's just how squares are. And so that's our Saturday. Sunday, the end of the week. What do we have going on? Now, Jupiter is still in its square dance. Square dance with Saturn. So the essence of, expansion and contraction. That's Jupiter expands. Saturn kind of, tries to hold it in. And so you've got this, you can kind of feel the tension of those two elements at work here. And so that is the week in the astrological dance with the Lively Astrologer. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you're interested in chart interpretations, you can always look me up at thelively.astrologer.com. I'm on fire these days, ready to dance away and invite you to come and dance with me. There's that quantum entanglement factor that can be in play if you are willing to open up your antenna, allow something really magic to transpire. See you all next week. Ciao.